England versus India. The Cricket Badger Test Match Daily Podcast. Can Joe Root's England dominate on home soil? 5 mouth-watering test matches. Can Virat Kohli's India conquer the final frontier? Loving to talk test cricket every day.
Hello, cricket badges everywhere. How are you? We've had day one at the Oval. Fantastic day's cricket. And India up against it. We thought they were up against it, and then they've taken 3 late wickets. I'd say honours around about even as we embark on day 2 tomorrow. As always, I am James Butler, the Cricket Badger, and I am joined by my fellow fan badgers, Neil Varani, Rashid Dav, and Rito Maitra are with me today. Rito, an England fan. Neil and Raj are Indian fans. And let's start with you, Raj. You've got the outskirts of Stockholm behind you. Your wallpaper's disappeared. But you were on our WhatsApp group earlier saying it's going to be hard to talk about India tonight, James. It's going to be tough. But they did all right in the end, didn't they? Old Shardul Thakur, that 50, and then that wicket of Joe Root just before the close.
I think momentum shifted a little bit towards India in the end. I would definitely agree, but India is still far behind in this game. I still feel England have their noses ahead, and maybe 100 runs. Maybe India are a bit below par, because India would have needed 300 when they batted first, even after being put to bat on, because the wicket definitely looked much better than the Headingley test or the Lord's test. India could have put a better show. And I was sensing a little bit of, it was giving me vibes of the 2014 tour and all those English tours that, India have been part of the early morning session when they lost, 3-4 wickets in a succession. That is when I thought that, maybe, this tour is giving me that vibe and we are not going in that direction. But then, from 127 for 7, I would have fancied those extra 57 runs from Shardul Thakur. He put them, he put us in a position where, we could fight, unless 78 all out in the last test where, we were completely batted out in the first day itself. So that was a fighting knock, which Shardul brought us back into the game. And these 3 wickets in the end, especially the wicket of Joe Root in the end, which amazing delivery from Umesh to get rid of Joe Root. And that put this test match in, a much better position than it was in the morning. But I still feel, it's 65-35-ish England, and England are well ahead in this game.
Neil, Shai Manju's been on. He says Thakur's 57 runs have shifted a little bit of momentum towards India. Would you agree with that, or would you agree with Raj that it's maybe still just England ahead?
I think it's slightly England ahead, but no more than slightly. I think the biggest thing is the wicket of Joe Root. We've spent the whole summer just watching Joe Root with another. Now England have got to get themselves to a lead without him, and without that reliance on his runs and his calmness at the other end. So it'll be very interesting.
He only made 21. I mean, the world's going to fall off its axis, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Advantage India. That's the crazy thing, isn't it? We've been going from one polarized end to the other throughout this series, and the only constant has been Joe Root's runs. So what happens now? All bets are off. If Joe Root can't make a run, how can any other England player?
Rito, from an English perspective with the ball, Chris Wokes, he looks like a decent find for England, this youngster, doesn't he? He's come into this team out of nowhere, taken 4 wickets. He looks pretty decent.
Yeah, really, James is playing test match cricket after a year. Who would believe 4 for 55, something like that? And he was just, this morning, Jimmy Anderson looked a bit off color, and Chris Wokes was the perfect foil for him. But with Joe Root getting out for low 20s, I will tell you one thing, Joe Root has scored hundreds this year when Josh Butler has been in the team, and The other test matches when Josh Butler hasn't been there, he hasn't scored one.
Oh, Rito, clutching at straws, clutching the old Butler straws. Nothing wrong with the Butler straws. The other bowler that impressed today, as he's done all the way through this series, is Ollie Robinson. He's taken multiple wickets in every single innings he's bowled in, I think. I don't think he's ever taken one or zero. He's always contributed. And he is, I mean, I was joking about Wokes obviously being a find, but Ollie Robinson is a find, isn't he? He's obviously been playing for Sussex, but England have now found him and they've got a real player there.
Yeah, James, he really has been the find of the summer for England. And what I've heard from the pundits is that he has been ready for Test match cricket for a few years now. He is 27, and we have already talked about him a lot of times on this podcast. His skill level is just magnificent, and his temperament as well is pretty fine for an England Test match player as well.
Raj, Virat Kohli, obviously a lot of talk about him during this series, about when is he going to find form. I tweeted earlier, I actually want to see him get 100 because I just love watching that fella bat. He's a genius. And it just looked like he was starting to tick. He had a bit of a luck early on. He was dropped and got away with a couple, but he looked like he was en route to getting something really match changing or match winning today, but fell on 50.
Absolutely, and this is the best he's, I think, batted this series. He looked very calm in the crease, very assured. He knew where his off stump was, even though England continuously tested him in the corridor of uncertainty, which the Indian batters do not prefer to be tested. Kohli was leaving the balls at will, and whatever opportunities that he had, he made sure that he cashed on those opportunities and made run scoring look very easy today. So he was set for a big one, and today you see. Nasser also, talk about the little technical adjustments that he made. He was shuffling a lot more today than his previous games to come closer to the off stump, and that's what maybe helped. Because I remember in 2010, I think Sachin made a similar adjustment against Steyn, where he took an off stump guard and tried to shuffle across the crease and tried to make sure that all the off stump channel balls that he tries to play on the leg side. So Kohli also came in with that similar mindset, and he was set for a big one. But unfortunate to have got that delivery from Robinson, and he just made 50 runs, because a Kohli's century year would have been extra special, and India would have had their noses ahead for a century.
Neil Anand, one of our fellow fan badges, he christened Shardul Thakur Shardulka earlier on, kind of like a hybrid of Tendulkar. And he came out with basically a platform to do whatever he liked, didn't he? Because he had the tail alongside him. He was a chance to just open his shoulders and see what he could do. But it's all right saying that, but he did it, didn't he? It was a terrific, not the fastest 50 ever seen in a Test match at the Oval. And it has actually probably changed this game. Well, it certainly kept India in this game.
It was absolutely superb. That's the sort of thing that Rishabh Pant's been trying to do. And it's weird because Shardul's played, is this his fourth Test? He played at Nottingham.
Yeah.
He played at Brisbane, and in the first innings at Brisbane, him and Washington both scored 50 or 60 sensibly, but still attacking to keep India in the game at that point. And this was a classic lower order 50 where you ride your luck a lot, you hope for the good connections, and you just go for it because you know that either you or one of your fellow tail enders is going to have a ball with the name on it very soon. But he hit it so cleanly, and yeah, I think there's the difference between 140 all out and 191 all out isn't just 51 runs. Also, the mindset, the famous momentum that everyone talks about. But India went into the start of of England's innings feeling a lot better about themselves. I mean, we saw how they started at Headingley, having been wiped out completely with no real upside to their own innings, and it can be very hard to change that. But there was a little bit of a spring in their step when they went out to bowl, and Shardul just counter-attacking a little bit and scoring quite a few runs there. that's actually more important than the 50-odd runs that he put up with Umesh Yadav, because that then led to Bumrah bowling with confidence and taking 2 early wickets.
Rito, we talked a little bit on our WhatsApp group today about what I'm going to bring up now. The fact that Indian fans, from my perspective anyway, and you're a neutral sitting in India, so you've kind of got probably a slightly different perspective on it again. But how, when India are playing really well and they're winning matches and people are getting centuries and fifers and stuff, all I see on Twitter is rah, 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 India. As soon as it starts to turn a little bit, the pendulum swings towards defeat, everything goes quiet and it is complete doom and gloom. It's like tumbleweed. And then a few wickets or a Shardul 50, and then people start to come back out from behind the sofas again. It's passionate support, it's heart on sleeve, but it's very much either win or lose. There's nothing in the middle, is there?
Yeah, Indian fans are highly volatile, James. It has been one of the characteristics of Indian fans. But I understand where that comes from. They expected this Indian team to beat New Zealand in the World Test Championship final, but unfortunately they lost against them. And then again, such an embarrassing defeat in Headingley has just brought out that side out of them now after such a dominant performance in Lord's.
Yeah, I find it fascinating, Raj. And I mean, you were one of them, Raj. You were threatening to not come on the podcast if India had a bad day today. So, I mean, how does that work from inside your head? Tell us what's inside Raj's head when India are having a bad time.
No, but that's definitely not what you compared to. I'm not one of those fans who would completely cringe. But you expect a better performance from these players. The thing is that India is not the India of the early 2000s or the early 2010s. India is blessed with the fast bowling that they have at their disposal now, where every test match you see those fast bowlers running in, doing the extra yards and getting those 20 wickets. That is what the least you could expect is the Pujaras, the Rahanes and Kohlis to perform and put up a good fight. So what has been disappointing as an Indian fan is that you've seen this over the years, be it 2012 series against England, 2014, 2018. There's hardly any collective effort from the batting performance. So that's what is a bit disappointing. In the morning when 3 wickets fell down cheaply, that is when the old memories reminiscence fast, and it was all over the head, and you might and Headingley and the Adelaide being the 2 instances which were very fresh, you would not want another performance where India is bundled out under 100. So I think that was the fear. Other than that, that this is an exceptional side, and with the likes of Stokes, Archer, and a couple of other players, key players missing, you would know that this is the best chance that India can win a series in England. So you do not want to miss that opportunity. And even if England had those players, this Indian side is well capable of putting in a good performance if you get your selections right and if you execute properly.
I'll come on to the selections in just a second. But we've got Raj in Sweden, an Indian fan. We've got Rito, an English fan in India. And then top right, we've got Neil, an Indian fan, sitting there in England. And so you've got a slightly different perspective on it as well, Neil. But it does seem to get very tumbleweedy when India aren't doing very well. That vocal support, where the team probably needs it most, disappears completely.
Yeah, and I think I've likened it because I'm originally from Manchester, and I was a Man United fan in the 80s when we were fairly shambolic. But I've seen through the Ferguson years, people who've started watching when you're successful don't really appreciate the highs as much and get very shocked by the lows. And I think there's a group of Indian fans who've grown up with India in the last 3 years and haven't seen us be an absolute shower outside India, which we were through a lot of the 80s, 90s, and to be fair, the 2000s as well. And that's with the greatest batting lineup that India's ever seen. So I think I've got a slightly more balanced view. Look, this is a great side.
Living in England as well, Neil, you know what the English perspective is. England are, it's kind of similar in a way. If England win, we still want to slag the team off. And if England lose, we look for reasons why they were gallant losers. There's kind of like there is a different perspective from English.
It's
fans,
very contrarian, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think English fans are always quite critical, even on the good days, and probably try and bolster the team up on the bad days. It's different kind of vibe at all. But I mean, you were going to get to there with your answer that this Indian side is a bloody good team. They've lost one match in the last Test match, and it was not a great performance from India, and it was a fantastic performance by England in the last Test match. And there are some days where you've just got to, whatever team you support, say the opposition actually did really well today. It's not always your team has played badly. Sometimes it's the opposition has played really well.
Joe Root is England's best batter and is playing in career best form. Jimmy Anderson is England's greatest ever bowler and is about as close to his best as I've seen him. Ollie Robinson has been absolutely superb. In fact, most of the bowlers have been superb, and it's 1-1. I think that's the perspective that people need to have. So I think some criticism is absolutely warranted in terms of team selection. Some guys who haven't been performing quite as well. But if you discount Joe Root and look at everyone else on either side, no one is scoring regular runs.
And the conditions that the England seamers are bowling in, that they're very familiar with, are helping them, aren't they? And they're putting it in the right places. And that is a cocktail which is going to trouble any batsman in the world. You put Sachin Tendulkar out there today, he wouldn't have found it very easy. He probably would have scored runs. He'd have probably got a 50, a bit like Virat Kohli did, but he would have found it difficult today. Rito, from an English perspective, we've been very concerned about the top three. And we'd solved the problem. At Headingley, the problem was solved, wasn't it? And then we see Burns out for 5, Hamid's out for 0, and all of a sudden England are, 6 for 2. And the problem hasn't been solved at all. Although David Malan at number 3 looks far more solid.
The good days don't last long, James. Yeah, they put on 135 in Headingley, and the openers are on for 6 on the board. But David Malan, he looks in good form. He really, he missed out in 100 in Headingley, and he looks with Joe Root, with him and Joe Root in the crease. It looked like that England have found some stability. But Umesh Yadav, late in the day, he found a Jaffa. Both the changes that India have made in this game, Umesh Yadav and Shardul Thakur, they both have paid off so far. Shardul Thakur with the bat in hand and Umesh Yadav taking the wicket on Joe Root.
Let's take that point, Rito. Rito's saying that India have made 2 changes and they've both been instrumental in their success today. So surely they got the team selection right, Raj.
It's I would not talk in hindsight for sure, since Thakur had made sure that India comes back in this game with this crucial and fighting knock of 57. So I would definitely not talk on hindsight. But how on earth does Ravichandran Ashwin not play this game? 413 wickets. He is the best spinner in the world right now, and Ravichandran Ashwin does not need an assisting surface when where he has to play. So what worries me, James, is not that England has played well. There is acceptance among the fans that England has been relentless with their lines, and Joe Root has been in ominous form. So all these things are completely understandable. But what worries me is that World Test Championship final, you go with 2 spinners, and then you defend yourself saying that you've gone with 2 spinners because that's the most balanced attack that you play. And then in the first test that you play in England, you break that rule and play 4 fast bowlers, and then go on to make press conferences and say that this is the template that we want to be taking further, that you want 4 fast bowlers operating in tandem. And that is
just in there, Ashutosh Chaturvedi, his message, he said he would have played Ashwin because Ashwin can bat as well, and he kind of solidifies the lower middle order too, doesn't he? Jadeja coming in at number 5 was a strange one as well. I mean, everybody had to double take when he walked out.
I think I like the move. I like the move because if you watch the three test matches closely, I think Jadeja was a lot assured than the other batsmen. And Jadeja being a left-hander, I think I definitely welcomed the move because that provided Rahane and Pant a little more cushion. And
Yeah.
Jadeja being a left-hander, he altered some of the English bowling plans, which was a welcome move. And Jadeja, he leaves the ball very late. So in that sense, also, it was a good aggressive move. So definitely I liked that. But in I would not definitely not talk on hindsight. So Jadeja definitely had his place guaranteed because he was preferred as a batsman who could bowl a few overs. But I would have definitely preferred Ashwin over Shardul Thakur because you cannot leave the world's best spinner out for 4 test matches in a row.
I find it interesting there when on the Sky coverage, you can see the coaching staff with their little earpieces on, listening to the commentary on the telly, and Michael Holding's talking, saying, "Why on earth have they not picked Ashwin?" And Ashwin stood right behind them watching the TV coverage. So Ashwin knows that everybody's talking about him. There were pictures on Twitter. Where's Ashwin? There were people with telescopes looking around the oval, looking for Ravichandran Ashwin. It does seem bizarre. I mean, there's no way. I can't think of another team on the planet that wouldn't have him in their side at the moment.
No, absolutely. As a spin option, he's better than anyone. I think Ashwin's problem comes down to the team makeup. They don't feel that they can play the 2 spinners in England, and they don't.
Mark
they
Butcher
don't
made
feel
an
they
interesting
can.
point on Sky. He said that the World Test Championship final against New Zealand was very seamer friendly, and it seems to have lulled the Indian selectors into thinking, right, we need to go in seam heavy, because that was what would have worked against New Zealand, because they played 2 spinners against that New Zealand side, and it didn't work that day. But as they followed up on the TV coverage, every pitch in England is different, and you have to just judge the circumstances test by test. But even so, he's the second best spinner in the world. The second best bowler in the world, the first best spinner in the world, and he can bat too. It's a no-brainer, isn't it?
I'd have him in, definitely. Like Raj, I'd have played him ahead of Shardul. I knew Shardul was capable of lower order runs. I don't think he'd top score for us in this innings. But the reason that I can understand the 4-seamer attack, and let's be fair, 2 test matches out of 3 in a day, that 4-seamer attack has been correct.
Yeah.
And because of the weaknesses that we do have in our middle order, there's no way you can jot Jadeja's runs. He's scored 180 runs so far in this series. That's
he's not one of the most solid Indian batsmen, to be fair to him, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I'd have had Ashwin in. I'd have had Thakur out. I think Umesh coming in was good from fresh blood. Someone who hasn't had to play 3 test matches already. But I can understand why they've stuck with 4 seamers. And I think it's an acceptable strategy for England. It's just really frustrating when you know how good Ashwin can be, and what wicket taker he can be. There was a good point made by someone who said that Jadeja at the moment is not really threatening from a wickets perspective, but is keeping things very tight. So if you wanted to, you could treat him as your 4-seamer, the workhorse who just holds up an end, goes for next to nothing, have Ashwin as an attacking spinner, and rotate the 3 other quicks who are a lot more attacking, because you have one person holding up an end. So if you use Jadeja as that cart horse, then that would be a way to go 3 and 2, and just have him bowl stump to stump, give nothing away.
I mean, if you're playing Jadeja as your number 5 batsman, you've got him as the spare spinner, haven't you, rather than anything else? But thank you, Ashutosh, and to Shai for your questions today. Shai suggesting, Raj, that England need to score at least 300 to challenge India in the second innings. Obviously, England are going to have to bat last on this oval track, and it might be taking spin by then without Ashwin there.
Absolutely, they need to have 100 runs lead over India to stand a chance, because if India bundle England under say 200, anything under 200 or 220, India would fancy their chance, because they would be the ones who would not be batting last. And with this 4 fast bowler attack, that is when this 4 fast bowler attack becomes interesting. When the opposition team has to chase 160, 170 odd in the 4th innings, that is when you have an upper hand, when where you field 4 fast bowlers. And Kohli likes that template. You clearly can see from his captaincy, he likes to attack with his fast bowlers. He likes to hunt in pairs. That's what gives him high, even fielding in the slip cord, and you could see that fast bowlers running in. That is the sort of captain Kohli is. He likes these fast bowlers. So India would definitely want England to be bundled out under 200, 220. And the most important thing that they got was to get Joe Root wicket in the last part of this innings now. So tomorrow they would want, say, England to be, say, 100 for 5, and that would be game on.
It would make a big difference, wouldn't it, just psychologically, if Joe Root was walking out there tomorrow morning with his pads on and his bat in his hand. And you can see the light fading in Sweden quite rapidly behind Raj. Rito, how do you see it in terms of what Shai is suggesting there, that England would need to score at least 300 to put pressure on India, because obviously having to bat last? Would you see it the same way?
Yeah, I do see the same way. Today, India will argue that they had the better day with the late wicket of Joe Root. Now, Ollie Pope coming in next after Craig Overton, so it's game on for India. Ollie Pope, he might average 100 plus at his home ground, but Test cricket is different from first class cricket. So he's making a comeback after some time into the team, and this pitch will take some spin. We can see the footmarks of the fast bowlers, and Jadeja will be handful in that last inning. So England will need a lead of at least 100 to 150. Anything under 50 lead, India will be very happy with it.
Neil, let's finish with Shane Warne. I was listening to him on the commentary today, and I was absolutely scratching my head at some of the stuff he was saying. Incredible bowler. And a terrific cricket mind, I think, at times, because he could have been Australian captain had he not misbehaved a little bit off the pitch. I think he'd have been Australian captain. But a couple of things he said today, just couldn't get my head round. He said you can't win a test match on day one, but you can go a long way to losing it. India lost the test match at Headingley on day one. Well, that means that England won it on day one, so that doesn't make sense. And what's the other thing he said later on? It just absolutely made no sense at all. He was just talking absolute rubbish. Oh, he was talking about Bumrah. Umar Shadab took the new ball, bowled the first over, and then he complained for the next 20 minutes about the fact that Jasprit Bumrah hadn't taken the new ball. I was thinking, well, what's Jasprit Bumrah got in his hands from the other end? Jasprit Bumrah can't bowl from both ends, can he?
I've got to the stage where Shane Warne is just white noise. I assume that whatever he says, he's complaining that they haven't brought the spinner on yet. I assume that he was saying that the spinner should have been opening for India today. It's absolutely bizarre that a guy who is the second best spinner of all time has somehow managed to overshadow all of that with his clickbait tomfoolery. It's really quite a shame. If he's not talking about spin bowling, then you might as well just mute the commentary, because it's going to be garbage.
I'll tell you who is good, and I'm really pleased to see him on the Sky coverage, and that's Mark Butcher. Previous guest on the Cricket Badger podcast is Butch, and I think on the coverage that every time I turn on the TV and watch Butch commentate, he's talking sense, and he does it in a really nice, engaging way as well. I think he's got a really good manner to him, and alongside Atherton and Nasser and what have you, I think Butcher should be a mainstay of that Sky commentary. He's really good. I mean, I do quite a lot of commentary, and I really enjoy it. And you do find yourself talking rubbish at times just to fill the time. So I can see that as well. But who is your favourite commentator, Rito? If you could pick the dream commentary box. You're allowed 3 in there. Who would be your 3 commentators that you'd have to listen to?
Yeah, 2 of them will be from the skybox. That's Atherton and Nasser Hussain. They are the most what I would say the most balanced commentators. They don't go hooray when England are doing well, and they are not too disappointed when England are not doing well. And the third would be Harsha Bhogle. He has really made a way for others who are not cricketers to come into the commentary box. So those are the 3 commentators.
You've heard Rito's 3 there, Raj. You can either keep all of those yourself, or you can substitute them. Who would you bring in if you're going to change them?
I think I really like his choices, but I would sneak in one more name. I really miss the gravity of Beno. Over the years, it was beautiful commentary. You could really transcend from radio to media boxes. Commentary changes a lot, and I really miss Beno a lot. But other than that, in the modern era, maybe Nasser, Atherton, and Mark Nicholas. I like Mark Nicholas as well, and he's one of my favorites.
Well, how about you, Neil?
Nasser, definitely. Bish, who is absolutely superb, and especially when he does under 19s World Cup stuff, is better research than anyone I've ever seen. And Ian Smith was absolutely superb during the World Cup, especially in the final when he got put on because they thought that New Zealand were going to win, and he handled that personal heartbreak so professionally and beautifully. It was unbelievable.
You're talking about Ian Bishop's preparation there. I found when I've done work, the games you have to prepare for more than most are the things like the England under 19s, where you probably don't, they're not household names. You haven't got a grounding already of knowledge that you can kind of like blag it off the back of. You've got to do your research and you've got to do it properly. But even now, though, you see commentators, frontline commentators, somebody comes in as a left field selection or something into a test series, or most notably that recent one-day series when England had to kind of revamp the whole lot. So there were a few unfamiliar faces there. And it's quite clear to me that a lot of the people commentating on it had no idea who if they walked past them in Sainsbury's supermarket, they wouldn't know who they were. And that I think is quite poor at some stages. Let's get back to the test match then before we say goodbye for today. One final question. How much would England score? How much would England want to be chasing in the final innings of this test match? I mean, we have no idea when that final innings is going to be. It looks like it might flatten down, and the weekend's forecast is a little bit better, so it might not be 13 wickets per day all the way through this test match. But if you were in the England dressing room, Rito, how much would you be confident of chasing after what you've seen today?
Yeah, no more than 200, James, with that rough marks, as I said, from the fast bowlers very visible already at the end of day 1. So no more than 200 to get a big first inning score and keep India down again in the third innings.
Raj, would you be happy to see England chasing 200 with Virat going unleash hell boys again?
I think if I had to wear the England hat, I would not be chasing more than 170. If you're talking about 200 in the 4th innings, I would think that India has a firm chance to win this test match, because they would hunt in pairs in the final innings. Jadeja would come into play with those footmarks created for him for the left-handers, which Kohli talked about in the toss as well. So anything more than 170, I would fancy India's chances.
Is that a Chelsea shirt you've got on?
Yeah.
Is that a Chelsea?
Yeah.
Oh dear, I'm going to take you off this podcast. Neil, same question to you. How much would you, from an Indian side of things, how much would you want on the board for England to come out to have to knock off?
I reckon England would be happy up to about 160, 170. Then it starts getting a little bit dicey, especially now that the year of root is over. I think England want a minimum lead of 50 runs. tomorrow by the time they're finished, minimum, because I think any less than that, and India could get quite a bit ahead in the third innings compared to the condition of the pitch when they come back to back at the end.
So interesting, the chase, isn't it? Because when it's around about 150, you can find yourself sort of 40 for 4 or something and fall in a heap, but you only need one partnership, don't you, really? 160 partnership or something like that, and you're home and hosed. So 150, I never think is enough on any kind of surface. 200, just psychologically, anything 200 or more starts to look far more imposing. But we'll see how it goes. We have another day's play tomorrow, obviously. England trying to, well, first of all, get up to level pegging with India's 191. They finished at 53 for 3. We'll see how that goes tomorrow. And we'll be joining you again on the Cricket Badger podcast to talk about all things day 2 the same time tomorrow. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for watching. For those of you that are listening later, thanks for your ears as well on the traditional podcast. Thanks, Neil and Rito and Raj, for joining me on today's show. And I've been James, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks, everybody, and enjoy the cricket tomorrow. It's been a terrific test match so far. One day down, 4 more potentially to go. I've got commentary on Saturday and Sunday, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm going to get my Sunday shift. So hopefully they'll bat long and big tomorrow and make sure I get some money on Sunday. See you tomorrow.